Hey, everybody. Thanks for your patience, and it's always just a thrill to see everybody in the room here after all the weather and craziness that everybody's been through. So nice to see you hardy souls out here to enjoy a program to Borneo. I'm really looking forward to that. And I want to welcome you all here for our Audubon program meeting. We're still, a little wonky on the whole Zoom sharing hybrid program, but we make it work pretty much. So we're very happy to have folks both here and out on the Zoom world as well. So my name is Mava. I'm president of Lane County Audubon Society, and we are happy to be here. Like I said, I have one announcement from an audience member who wants to speak on behalf of Cascades Raptor Center. So thank you so much for coming up, Claire.
Hello, I'm speaking on behalf of Julie Collins, who is our executive director at the Raptor Center. And she just wanted to let everybody know that the outpouring of community support has been amazing, and that the birds and staff are safe, and that we're hopeful to open again in February. And that if you want to donate, cascadesraptorcenter.org. Or if you want to email for any information, it's info@cascadesraptorcenter.org. And kind of to top off what we're dealing with, they are also under construction at our resident care building, where we prepare food and the trainers discuss the birds because we're now under the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then we're also hosting the International Avian Trainers and Educators Conference here, February 14th. So keep your fingers crossed. Yes.
What's the name of the owl that got away?
Yeah, Lorax. And
Lorax.
yes, and she is very chatty, and the trainer who's closest to her was on that day and was able to create a flight pattern and talk her back. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So Dennis will introduce our program and tell you about next month's program and introduce our speaker for tonight. So thanks so much.
I didn't trip on a wire, so that's good. Yeah, it's really great to see you all here. Next month, we're going to have someone from the Xerces Society. It's going to be Dave Cullen. He actually lives in Brookings, so he's coming here. He's going to spend some time with some friends in Springfield and then do a program for us. And if you're not familiar with the Xerces Society, they were formed in the early 70s to protect invertebrate butterflies, bees, insects of all sorts who were becoming extinct. And the name Xerces comes from the Xerces blue butterfly, which was one of the first insects that was documented as being extinct because of human behavior. And so the society then was formed to try and protect these animals. And Dave Cullen is a Xerces ambassador. He's also an Oregon master naturalist, and he's a master I never said it right. I had it right at home. Melitologist, which is a bee person, a bee scientist. Okay. So anyway, so he'll be here to talk to us not just about bees, but about insects and what we can do in our own backyards to foster the preservation of all of these species that sometimes we neglect. So that'll be next week or next month. Okay, tonight we have Magnus Persmark, this will be the third program he's done for us. He was born in Gothenburg, Sweden. He and his wife, Rosie Hammond, moved to Oregon in 2005. He has been an adventurer, traveler. He's been in many places around the world, and we really enjoy hearing the stories that he has to tell about the places he goes. And Rosie goes along with him on all of these things. So we admire her too for all of this, and we're glad that she goes, because I'm sure that the Magnus really appreciates having you on. So without further ado, let's give a nice warm welcome to Magnus Persmark.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and thanks to everyone for coming here tonight, and thanks for you who are viewing from by Zoom. It's really a pleasure, and I do appreciate Rosie coming along. I don't think I would probably have traveled as much as I have without her. No pressure. So this is about Borneo, and I should also say that I have lost my speaker. We couldn't figure out how to show them on the screen here. So I think you're in luck because that means I will not remember what to say. So I will show more picture and talk less. Anyway, Borneo. So you may ask, where is Borneo? And why would you go there in the first place? The where and the what, I think, are pretty easy questions to answer. And as for the why, that's what I think I'll be spending the next 40 odd minutes trying to convey to you. So Borneo is the third largest island in the world after New Guinea and Greenland. It's about the size of Texas and Louisiana combined, to give it some context, so it's large. It also straddles the equator. You can see Singapore there on the left and the Philippines to the north. So it is hot and it is muggy. Monsoon season, if you're planning to go there, is between October and March, but it rains really all year. Although it doesn't rain excessively much, maybe 160 inches on average, of 4 times that of Eugene, but say far less than some places in India and even Hawaii. I call out the highest point, Mount Kinabalu, as 13.5 because it's important to the biogeography and the diversity of the island. Also in reference relative to our own place, Mount Whitney is 14.5, so it's pretty tall. And while it's an island, it's not a country. It is divided into 3 political entities, the Malaysian states of Sabah and Sarawak. So this is East Malaysia as opposed to West Malaysia, north of Singapore. The Islamic Sultanate of Brunei, one of the richest countries in the world. They have all the oil that was ever discovered in Malaysia. And in the lower 75%, the Indonesian state of Kalimantan. Historically, Borneo was primarily populated along the coasts. It is very rugged. It is impenetrable. It's swampy. It's dark jungle. So the main population is on the coast. However, there are around 300 ethnic groups in the interior. Some of them are the Dayaks, Penan, and Iban. The Dayaks are probably the most famous. Many of them practiced headhunting up into the Second World War. So this, I think, has contributed to the mystique that surrounded Borneo for a long time. It was inhospitable to foreigners. It was impenetrable. It had some odd and strange creatures and wonderful creatures. So it has had an allure for naturalists for a long time, including Wallace. The major religions are Islam, 65%, but there's also a substantial Christian population, primarily in the interior highlands, due to the efforts of Dutch and British colonialists. Oops. So the wild island is large. Our tour actually was relatively confined to the northern end, up here in Sabah. We started at Mount Kinabalu and traveled around to a few different places. We did venture into the northern end of Sarawak. And I'm not going to, in the presentation, go item by item, but really take you from the highlands of Kinabalu down to Sarawak and down into the lowlands to sort of make more or less sense of that trajectory. I've tried to be faithful in the slides to where I saw a particular item or in particular animal or bird or plant, but it's not 100%. I was just trying to make makes sense. Also, to make sense of what we see, I want to show this more geological slide of what is called Sundaland. This is the Southeast Asian mainland plus the islands in Sumatra and Java and Borneo. Over the past 800,000 years, this has been what predominantly the geography is like. Only 10 times, about every 100,000 years, has Borneo and Java and Sumatra been islands. And that has contributed greatly to the flora and fauna. There's a great deal of overlap between other South Asian or Southeast Asian countries. However, there's also a very distinct biogeographical demarcation just east of Borneo, the famous Wallace Line, which affects is a border between the Southeast Asian biome and that of the Asian Australian. So, for instance, on the west of the line, we have mammals. To the east of the line, we have marsupials. And while there's birds, of course, that move across, a lot of birds are loath to cross over open ocean. So there's a great deal of difference between those islands, even though they're close physically. So there are paradise birds in New Guinea. There are no paradise birds on Bali or Java or Borneo. There are no trogons in Papua New Guinea. So it's an interesting place to be for that reason as well. So here is our brave group. We traveled with three friends from Singapore, and our leader in the back, Yosu Tech. He's a native of Kuching in Sarawak, so he's a native of Borneo. Pretty much self-taught when it comes to bird and natural history. He was fantastic, very energetic. He had us up early. We spotlighted pretty much every night. He was very, very good. And so before we head out, there are a couple of things that one should know. Borneo is tropical, okay? And there are lots of very good fruits. But whatever you do not bring durian, mangosteen, and jackfruit into the hotel, into a government office, or onto the airplane. You will be in big trouble. Durian smells, mangosteen makes ugly stains, and jackfruit is very sticky, and it doesn't smell great either. And when you're out in the bush, beware of. So the video doesn't work here either, apparently. Nope, the video doesn't work. So what I had here was an embedded video that showed a leech, and they move quickly. They are swift, and they have an absolutely uncanny ability to get into one's pants, even when one is wearing leech socks. Now, it's a nuisance. It bleeds for 24 hours, but it doesn't spread disease. So it's a nuisance value, but it's not all that great. The rainforest, it's really marvelous. The Borneo lowland rainforest is the second oldest in the world, 140 million years old. Only the Dane tree in Australia is older. And it's probably the world's richest rainforest. It has 12,000 plant species. That is more than all of Africa combined. Just extraordinary. And to be honest, not being a plant person, a botanist, you really can't get a sense of this diversity when you're out in the forest. But just knowing that it's there is kind of awe-inspiring. 3,000 trees boggles the mind, 2,000 orchids, 50 pitcher plants. Yeah. And the Dipterocarps is a tropical family, some 700 species that goes from South America all the way over. But Borneo is a center for diversity of them. And also figs. This is a fig tree. The fruit grows directly on the trunk. They are the most important source of food for both animal and plants. And it's actually a very interesting sort of symbiotic relationship that had evolved over the millennia between the trees and the animals and birds, in that birds and animals will eat the seeds and they will scamper away or fly away and deposit the seeds elsewhere. So it helps the plant in the reproductive strategy. And the animals, depending on seed, can be from elephant that eats the big ones to little bats that eat the teeny tiny. So it has been an ongoing evolution for thousands of years. And unfortunately, today, with the disappearance of some of the megafauna, some of these trees actually have seeds that are no longer distributed normally. So they are kind of stuck in place where they are, and their future is somewhat uncertain. This is a dipterocarp seed, by the way. It should have two wings, diptero, but that really only applies to one of the genera in the family. This has 5. Borneo, as I mentioned, was covered by forest, impenetrable forest, but a lot have changed since the 1950s. Today, this is what remains of that forest. It has gone, the valuable hardwoods, teak, ebony, ivory, and so forth, has been taken by lumber. Palm oil plantations have taken a lot of the remaining forest. Today, Borneo produces 85% of the world's palm oil. And of course, this forest destruction has had dramatic effects on the diversity of plants, animals, and birds. From, I don't need to read the table for you, from virgin primary birds and mammals go down by orders of magnitude. It is sad and it's stark, and it just, gives us pause to see these figures and perhaps an appreciation of what little is left. So to the fauna, Borneo is home to impressive 250 terrestrial mammals. 40 of them are endemic. And of course, the mammals are dominated by the small guys, bats, over 100 species, rodents, rats and mice, 60 species. Borneo is a center of diversity for little rodents. And the megafauna, which is more exciting to see in all honesty, includes elephant, Sumatran rhino, orangutan, and clouded leopard in historical time, not written historically, but in, since the last ice age. Borneo has hosted leopard, tiger, and Javan rhino, but they're all gone. There's only about 20 or so Sumatran rhinos left on the island. So human encroachment, development, hunting has taken tremendous toll. On this slide, I'm showing 2 odd nocturnal mammals, the Borneo colugo. It's actually most closely related to primates. It's a gliding mammal, and this fellow here, which we saw in the Donham Valley, had his aim not quite right. So he crashed onto the ground, and we wondered what's going to do. And he started scampering up the vine very efficiently, but probably not what he was expecting to do. This lone loris here is another strictly nocturnal animal. It's the only poisonous animal. It has a gland in its armpits with a toxin that is activated by its saliva. So it's an efficient way of defending itself. Yes, you bet. Oh, yeah, he's walking upside down. So noise. This is the head of the colugo, and that's the head. So he has a membrane between his front legs and front-legged or whatever, arms and legs. You bet. And I just say I have to apologize for some of the pictures are a little grainy. These are taken at night without flash, and even in the forest during the day, I had to crank. For those of you who are into photography, I had to crank my ISO up to 25,000.
Wow.
just to have a chance to get a picture. It is dark in this forest. It is really dark. And the canopy is about 100 to 120 feet. So there's a long way for the light to be captured on the way down. There are trees, by the way, who are a lot taller. There's dipterocarp tree down in the valley that was a yellow Meraki, as the species called, was measured at over 300 feet to about 300 feet. Makes it the tallest tropical tree in the world, and the tallest tree in the world, the tallest tropical tree, and the tallest tree period after our redwood and the Himalayan cypress. Impressive. There are birds in Borneo, of course. 600 have been observed, 400 are seen regularly, so about the same as Oregon. There are, depending on which taxonomic authority you listen to, there are about 60, give or take, endemic bird species. These are special in the sense that they are unique evolutionarily. The bristlehead is, I think, an iconic Borneo species. It's so weird that it's in its own family, in its own genus. So it's a monotypic family, the only one of its kind. It's a, I shouldn't say evolutionary dead end, but I guess I'm struggling for other words to use. Yeah, survivor, that's better. Thank you. The crimson-headed partridge striking and the fruit hunter are also unique or unusual in the way that they are monotypic genera.
Is that an adult?
That's an adult. That is an adult, yes. So from this intro, we're going to head up into Mount Kinabalu. It's a granite dome, really, and it looms large over northern Sabah. It's large enough and massive enough to create its own microclimate, and there are several different biotopes that one descends into or escalates up to as one goes up the mountain. In this moist, temperate region, there's a lot of fog, a lot of clouds, but also some interesting things. I had dreamed about seeing a Revelia for decades. This is one of the, probably the world's heaviest flowers. It's a family of some 16 species. They can grow up to 3 feet in diameter. It's a parasite. It has no stems, it has no leaves, it has one giant flower, and it only lasts for about a week. Then it just melts away, disintegrates, and it smells of rotten flesh so as to better attract pollinating flies. And this plant is also kind of an anachronism, just like some of the trees have anachronistic seeds. It has a remarkably inefficient reproductive strategy. So that you have to have a male plant and a female plant. They have to be in the same place and they have to bloom at the same time. Then the pollen has to be transferred, or the seeds rather, have to be transferred to another plant. The seeds have to be transferred to another vine, and that vine in turn has to be penetrated by the roots of this little seedling. And it's believed that that was happened more efficiently in the past when the rhinos would eat the Rafflesia berries and go stomping around and deposit the seeds and damage the roots of the vine. And that doesn't happen anymore because the rhinos are gone. So people are actually cultivating artificially growing the Rafflesias and protecting them from predation. Oh, sorry, this is the bulb. A bulb. This is the mature flower. This is about the size 9 shoe foot. So you get it. This is not the huge ones, but this is a bud that is about to bloom. Thank you. Sorry, I missed that. If you do have questions, do interrupt me. the highlands here are temperate and cool and lend themselves well to growing veggies. And we enjoyed in some of our free time just walking the little open stall market and checking out what they have, talking to the people. And in the evenings, we enjoyed family style dining with fresh produce. It was all quite lovely. Now, birding in this forest can be tricky. First, some of the birds are just very, very difficult to see. So here we are waiting, and we are waiting, and we are waiting for something to show up. And when it does show up, well, where is it? No, it's here. No, it's here. It's just hard. But when we finally do get a moment, cameras come out and the rest of the group is held up for minutes. So I apologize to my dear wife for putting up with them. I mentioned that Borneo has a lot of small mammals. In addition to the squirrels, that you see two different species here, it's a center of diversity for them. 36 of the world's 285 species, impressive. It also has something called tree shrews. And they are not rodents. They are more related to primates than to rodents. Unique little family. There are 18 species total in the world, and Borneo has 9 of them. Primates. But it's the birds that really make us exciting, and gallinaceous birds are often colorful. I don't think I need to describe this crested partridge in words. It speaks for itself. The female is not a bad looker either, for that matter. Thank you very much. And here is a red-breasted partridge, another member of the family. But Borneo has a couple of larger gallinaceous birds, and the bulrus pheasant was absolutely just stunning. And you don't have to be a chicken to be appealing. Borneo has a number of doves and pigeons, like this emerald dove that I think can hold its own. It's terrestrial, so that's why it's on the ground. Borneo also has quite a few arboreal birds or arboreal doves and pigeons as well. I mentioned that our guide would take us spotlighting every night for mammals or frogs or owls. We saw a range of them, from the little sonda owlet. It is relatively closely related to our pygmy owl, to the bubok. It's a true owl, an Asian family of buboks. The name derives from it's called bubok. And just as a curiosity, it has a cousin in New Zealand, and that cousin says more pork. Guess what the owl is called? More pork. The buffy fish owl takes fish, it takes crustaceans, aquatic insects, and it's relatively large, not quite as large as our great horn, but it's a substantial critter. And this particular fellow liked to hang out at a local football pitch. So clearly he has sophisticated interests. The barbets of Asia are related to the barbets of South America. We have about 5-6 species in Borneo. This is an endemic. And for those of you that travel to the neotropics, you recognize the large bills and the sort of chunky head. Unique to Africa and Asia is a family called bullwoods. It's fairly large, 166 species. They are noisy, they are gregarious, and they can also be difficult to identify because most of them are fairly bland. Most of them also are not very musical. They croak and they shriek and they make not very appealing noises, although a few of them do. And for example, the straw-headed bulbul was almost extirpated from Indonesia because of its song, and that is captured for the cage bird trade, as with other birds I will mention briefly. The Pennon bulbul is another member of its family. It's also not terribly striking, but I think it's kind of cute with a spunky hairdo and white bristly beard. So from the bland to the quite more colorful, we have of course trogons even in North America and in Arizona, but certainly in Central and South America. And the trogons of Asia are in the same family as the trogons and quetzals in the New World. They're considered among the most beautiful birds in the world, and I think everyone can agree that they are no slouches exactly. They show a pronounced sexual dimorphism. The white-headed trogon here, the female on the left, and the male on the right. I think both are just stunningly beautiful in their own right. Hard to see, endemic to the mountains of Borneo. Laughing thrushes is another Asian family that's reasonably large, but there's a great deal of variety in both the size and the coloration of the birds. This chestnut-hooded laughing thrush we caught up in the mountains of Kinabalu. It is also endemic to Borneo. We were, I guess, particular to the endemic species that one can't see anywhere else, and many of them are frankly also present in very low numbers because of limited habitat and habitat destruction. The chestnut-crested juhina looks a bit similar to the laughing thrush, but it's a different beast altogether. These are actually in the family of white-eyes, and it has just finished consuming and beating up a little insect against the branch. That's the white little flutter up in the air there. The Dayak blue flycatcher I chose to represent the New World flycatchers, not related to the tyrant or other flycatchers we have in North America. It's a family of about over 300 species. Just of the blue flycatchers, there are several. Reminds us a bit of the bluebird, I think, but it really pretty bird. And we do have two members of the old flycatcher, the Muskikapa family in North America, in Western Alaska, the blue throat and the northern wheatear. Babblers. I love babblers and I hate babblers. They are very cute. They are small. They are fluffy, and they are terrestrial on the ground. It's an old world family, about 60 species. They also have an appealing, I think, behavior in that they live communally. They jointly defend territory, and they may even breed communally, where a dominant couple will produce the young, and the rest will serve as helpers. They remind me a little bit about wrens in their skulkiness and their reluctance to show themselves. I was lucky with these pictures. And with this one, the black-capped babbler is another member of this family. So from Kinabalu, we had south across the border. So it's a different state. We actually had to show our passport in crossing the border between the two Malaysian states, into Sarawak highlands. This is one of the few interior regions of Borneo where rice has traditionally been cultivated. And we spent a couple of nights here in a homestay with this lady who is preparing a delicious meal for us. Lovely family, she and her husband. This gentleman is greeting us and allowing us to pass through his pasture up to a hike. We're going to spend a couple of nights up in a slightly more rustic abode. And as you can see here, kids are kids. They are curious and cute everywhere in the world. So yes, we did walk a few miles, not too many, along an incredibly muddy trail to reach, to reach our destination for a couple of nights. This was not a Hilton. We had a room with some old mattresses and mosquito netting. We had sleeping sheets and pillows, and we were fine. And we had a lovely privy, which also served as the shower cum bathroom. We get a hot kettle of hot water from these young men who took the food and drinking water up to us, and also prepared the food. But when it was time to bathe, we would head in with a warm kettle, unlock the door, and start scrubbing. And Rosie didn't want to talk about this, but I have to. It was so memorable. I'm in there ready to lather up, and in zoom 7 or 8 giant black bees. Our guide had previously told us that their bite sting is very, very painful. I was not about to run out the door in my birthday suit. And I must say, I freaked out a little bit. But I don't know, inspiration come to the desperate. So we had there was a plastic bucket that you bathed yourself with. And I don't know where I got it from, but whack, zing, so smack, zing, then the bee was smacked into the corrugated walls of the bathroom, and I was able to rid myself of the danger and escape without further damage, except to my dignity, perhaps. Anyway. Beyond birds, Borneo is a center of diversity for pitcher plant, Nepenthes family. There are several different types here, or 3 different kinds here. The fanged pitcher plant is particularly fascinating. You can see it has those fang here, and if you look closely, you can also see an ant on it. It has a symbiotic relationship with a species of ant. And it has developed so long that the pitcher plant has lost the waxy interior to the pitcher that the others have that makes insects slide down. It has also lost the acidity of the liquid. So the ants get to carry home the insects and eat them. The plant gets nitrogen from the ant poop, and it gets protection from the ant. So they live in harmony ever. I think it's just absolutely fascinating. And to the pitcher plants, fascinating about them, the really large ones are so large that they serve as day roosts for bats. Wow. I mean, go figure. No wonder they are collected and endangered. And as to the issue of being collected, the Mullenkamp beetle, it's a rhinoceros type beetle, is over 4 inches long. The males can be quite aggressive and they fight. The female doesn't have the appendages, but it's a striking beetle. And millipede is just an example of another insect, and the trilobite beetle. I don't think it is going to play the video Nope, it's not going to play. We had a video of the way it moves. It's just going to propels itself along and flips its back end and hurtles itself forward. Yes.
You find in rocks.
No, they're different. It's just, but it looks like it. So I think that's how it got its name. The frogmouths are odd birds. They are nocturnal, found in East Asia and Australia. And just as nightjars and potoos in the New World, they have huge gapes, they have broad bills, but they are not related. In fact, they are closer to hummingbirds than to nightjars and potoos. So I think here again, we have an example of convergent evolution, that two families from different ends of the evolutionary tree finds a niche and adopts to it. Nature is just fascinating. So from the bland to the truly sparkling, pittas found in Asia, Australia, and Africa. They are solitary, they are terrestrial, and not only are they terrestrial, they like forests with a lot of cover. This is typically how one would see them. I was absolutely stoked in getting that picture. They're difficult to see, but and I think that's actually what we're waiting for in the introductory slide. They're worth the wait, and sometimes you get really lucky. This is a Bornean banded pitta, absolutely striking. I can't help it. I like babblers. They are spunky. They're cute, just like little wrens, and even more so are the wren babblers. Even more withdrawing. The mountain wren babbler here is endemic. These are slightly more widespread, very localized population of this guy. Among the oddities, the bare-headed laughing thrush certainly ranks pretty high. I showed you a laughing thrush a couple of slides ago. This guy is actually taxonomically, evolutionary, not related. It's closer to a babbler. I don't think I have to say that this is an endemic species. It exists nowhere else. It has a niche in Borneo in the highlands, and it's not common. Borneo has other odd and cute and just fascinating birds. These are all corvids, so they're all related to crows and jays. Bornean tree pie, Bornean green magpie are both endemic. The crested shrike jay also occurs on the Malaysian or the Malay Peninsula, but it is also unique in the sense that it is a monotypic family. Again, a evolutionary oddity or unique being. There's nothing else quite like it. I hope that the video of this works, but I think not. This is a white-crowned shama, and shamas are incredibly accomplished songsters, and that has led to the near extermination of several of their kind. There should be, let's see if this works. Beautiful song. And by the way, for full disclosure, I didn't record this. I took it from Xenocanto, the sound repository. So now we're moving down into the Dunham Valley. Dunham Valley, I think, is one of the more well-known places for natural history in Borneo. It is very large, and it was unique in the sense that it had no previous human habitation, so it was quite undisturbed when it was set aside. There had been some logging, but it hadn't been clear cut. So it's still home to a very large diversity of animals and plants. It's a lowland dipterocarp rainforest, including insects. I mean, cicadas, morning and night, it's almost deafening. I've never seen cicadas this colorful and this beautiful, and should I say, this loud. This guy in particular is extraordinarily loud. And oh, by the way, also I should also acknowledge iNaturalist, things primarily insects and butterflies, and some of the smaller mammals I was unable to identify by the guidebooks I used, the iNaturalist community. So there are plenty of butterflies. The straight line mapping, it's self-evident how it got its name. The staff sergeant here read through the bland, but I showed the picture because for several minutes, this teeny tiny insect with a long proboscis was just hanging on its rear end. I don't know if it was taking something from it or injecting something, but he was up to something odd. I wish I could find out what that was. But the prize when it comes to butterflies is clearly the Raja Brooks birdwing. It's also one of the species I've been dreaming about seeing literally for decades. It's huge and it's gorgeous, 6 inches. It's a CITES species, so you cannot exploit it. It's endangered. And the name is also, by the way, historical. It was named after Raja Brooks, who was an Englishman, sort of an adventurer who came to the aid of the Sultan of Brunei in the 1800s, quelled some rebellions, and was given a governorship of Sarawak, and then appointed to as Raja, as a regent. He was Raja Brooks, or the White Raja, and his family literally ruled Sarawak for 3 generations. Flashlighting, frogs. These are all tree frogs. I'll let the pictures speak for themselves there. Nature is amazing in its variety and its diversity, including snakes. We didn't see very many snakes. No true. Well, actually, we did see one, closest one. The arboreal rat snake is, as the name implies, strictly arboreal, hangs out in trees, likes to chomp down on birds and bird eggs and bats and other animals that live up there for humans. It's harmless, but it's a pretty one. This to me was one of the highlights of the avian highlights, the great Argus. It is one of the largest pheasants in the world, up to 80 inches long, and the tail alone goes up to 55 inches. It's massive. And it gets its name from the 100-eyed giant god in Greek mythology. It has eye spots on its wings. And I did recall this call here. Nope, it's not working. That's too bad.
It doesn't fly.
It does fly. It does fly. I mean, it's primarily terrestrial, but they can fly. Yes. You don't have to be large to be striking. The green broadbills are found in Africa and Asia, 3 three species in each place. The hoses and the whiteheads are endemic to Borneo. And believe me, while they are sparkling, they can be devilishly difficult to pick out in the green canopy. These guys are a little bit easier. The sunbirds and flower peckers are related. They both eat nectar. And the sunbirds in particular feel the needs of the hummingbirds in the New World. And here's another example of convergent evolution, in that they eat nectar, even their plumage is iridescent. But one important difference, and it's again fascinating, they can't hover. So the plants have in turn evolved, so the flowers are heavier. They hang down, so the birds can perch and reach up rather than hover as the hummingbirds do. The flower peckers have, of course, here, as you see, have much shorter bills, but they have a very long tongue that is tubular and has sort of a feathery end, and through that it's able to access nectar. The temming sunbird was probably the most striking of the ones we saw. And here another striking couple, the whiskered tree swifts. There are 4 species of tree swifts in the world. They're relatively closely related to our swifts, but distinct. And the female here on the left and the male on the right, in this particular species, is pretty confined to primary forests. And so that's why perhaps the reason we saw them in Downham Valley. We were very lucky to see a pygmy elephant. It's a little hard to see. Here's the tusk. Here's the rear end. There are about 1,500 Bornean elephants left in the world. It's relatively closely related to the elephants one finds in Sumatra and on the Malay Peninsula, but it's distinct. And I should also say, I think it does the animal a disservice to call it pygmy. There was absolutely nothing minute about this fellow whatsoever. And I also learned in preparing for the talk that there's a single Bornean elephant in American zoos, and that's important. I think this is, I didn't even put a label on this. This is the most iconic species of Borneo. And Borneo is a stronghold for orangutans, about 60,000 left. The 2 species in Sumatra are down to 14,000, respectively 800. So as a whole, as a family, as a group, they really are, they're having it hard to cope with the deforestation and hunting. They can become pests for palm oil on palm oil plantations, just like elephants, and they get shot in the process. It's all very sad. But just looking into his eyes and imagining what he is thinking when he's looking at us tourists, not a pretty picture. Now we're moving slightly lower to the Sepilok Forest Reserve in the northeast. It's a lowland. It has a magnificent, as you can see, canopy walkway that allows us to come eye to eye with a number of birds. I think it's 10,000 acres, so it's a decent size. And this is also where there is an orangutan rehabilitation center that is quite well known. A lot of tourists go there. Our guide didn't allow us to visit because it wasn't bird enough, but there you go. So eye to eye, we came eye to eye with some hornbills, bushy crested and black. And they exist in Africa and Asia, and they closely resemble the toucans, at least morphologically in South America, but they're not closely related. Again, an example of convergent evolution. They occupy the same niche and perhaps therefore look similarly. Curiosity, they're dexterous with their bills, but the tongue is not long enough to reach out and grab it. So they jerk their heads back and toss it back into their gates. They also have fused, for those of you medically inclined, fused second and third vertebrae because the heads and bills are so heavy. That is particularly true for this guy, the helmeted hornbill. The pictures are not great, but I include it because it is one of the largest hornbills. You see here, and it is also the one that is most critically endangered. The casque is made up of keratin, so ivory, in other words, and it has been used for carving in Asia for hundreds of years. But with the ban in China of importing elephant ivory, the demand for hornbill ivory skyrocketed, and they have been hunted absolutely relentlessly and driven very close to extinction. So we were just thrilled to see that some remain in the Don Valley. No, it's the same individual. Yeah.
Can you remind us what year you brought there?
This was, oh, sorry, I should have, of course. It was we spent all of April of this year, I think 5 weeks altogether.
2023. Okay.
Borneo has a number of kingfishers, from the more robust, like this colored kingfisher is a forest kingfisher. We are used to thinking about kingfishers as only catching fish, but they don't. They also live in the forest and take lizards and insects and small birds. This guy, however, is on a river, and it deserves its name. It's the size of a American goldfinch. It is teeny tiny, and just a sparkling, brilliant little ball of color. The blue-eared kingfisher's no slouch either, for that matter, and we saw that over a river. And now we're going about as far down in elevation as one can think. The Kinabatangan Sanctuary is closer to the ocean, is comprised to a large extent of mangrove and really lowland forest. Unfortunately, it was developed also extensively for palm oil plantation before it was understood how rich and diverse it was. So we will be going down the river. There's no walking trails, so it's all on the river. And one could see on occasion through the forest edge palm oil plantation in the background. But at least this area is preserved. And lest you think of swimming or going walkabout around the lodge, there are saltwater crocodiles, and they are not to play with. There are also elephants. The sign is for, but basically, don't slip and don't be trampled by an elephant. We did go spotlighting at night around the lodge, and there were elephant tracks. They have an electric barrier around the lodge itself, so they are there. We heard them and we saw the tracks. We didn't see them here. But we did see proboscis monkey, another iconic species of Borneo. It's one of the largest monkeys in Asia, and the male is significantly larger than the female. And in particular, his nose is large. It is impressive. It is a true proboscis. I think both of these females are pregnant. And you see them while they move inland into the forest during the day to forage. At dusk, they move down to the forest edge to pick up a night perch. So we see them at dawn or at dusk. We also saw in this area a fair number of raptors. The fish eagle takes the place of of the osprey. It has talons that are very well developed to capture fish. The Wallace's hawk eagle, it does not take fish. It is in fact one of the world's smallest eagles. It's about the size of a peregrine falcon. And the falconet lives up to its name. It's the world's smallest raptor. It's the size of a sparrow. So it makes a kestrel look humongous. It is teeny, and just like the kestrel, they take insects. So we were out on the river and we came across some brushy jumbo with some plastic or bubblegummy stuff in the middle. And of course, it's not bubblegum, it's plastic. It's the nest of a black and red broadbill. This Asian broadbill family, they're gregarious. 5 of them are found in Borneo, and all of them are just, I mean, I shouldn't say clownish, that's derogatory, but they are colorful and they have, I think, just personality out the wazoo. This guy is related to me. Finally, at the end of our trip, we headed down into the urban areas, Kota Kinabalu, which is where the international flights land, and out to the island off the coast called Mantanani Island. It actually has an endemic owl, the Mantanani scops owl, that we saw. And I think that's probably me in the water. Now, you may think this is a tropical paradise, and so did we, until we started walking towards the lodge. There was no welcoming committee. This is Rosie with the suitcase, and just plastic trash in unbelievable quantities. We were snorkeling, saw a few fish, and baby diapers. It's really quite sad, and yeah, what can I say? Coastal Borneo is full of fisher folks. Bornean sailors, together with, I guess, primarily Sumatran and Javan, actually settled, I think it's fairly well established, Madagascar in the 6th and 7th century. So they knew how to sail, and they also know how to fish. And in Kota Kinabalu, there's plenty of fish to be had. This is a breakfast market. You could have, they do have eggs, they have noodles, and they have fish balls, they have fish sticks, and they have fish patties. I grew up on fish balls, so I didn't mind, but it's I guess an acquired taste. We were there during Ramadan, so, and at the end of Ramadan, in particular, at night there's a big feast, and there were tents or open air stalls with food, and here they serve fried octopus. Everything we tasted, we bought more than we should have. It was so cheap, but it would look delicious. It was delicious. For a little more upscale experience, you could walk by the sidewalk restaurants, pick your red snapper caught earlier in the day, and have it brought to your table. Oh, very, very good food. And I must say, the people in general in Borneo were absolutely delightful. Very, very pleasant. That was as great of an experience to interact with the people we did. I think that's what we saw in nature. But we did see stuff here as well. The blue-naped parrot is actually, it occurs in Borneo, but on outlying islands. It's native primarily to the Philippines, but it has established a feral population in Kota Kinabalu. I didn't mind, I was happy to see it. The Pacific swallow closely resembles our barn swallow. Javan myna, another immigrant, they are opportunistic and take up residence well in cities and urban areas. So does the oriental magpie robin, also an accomplished songster that unfortunately has also suffered from having such a pretty song that is captured for the bird trade. We saw this metallic pigeon out on the islands. There are a lot of pigeons on Pacific islands. This is particularly colorful and attractive. There's also one plover, the Malaysian plover in Borneo, and you see here the chicken adult and trash all over with garbage, refuse. It's sad. The Philippine megapode or scrub fowl was clearly one of the oddities of our trip. I caught this guy early in the morning in the pavilion of a outfit for day trippers from Kota Kinabalu. So I presumably he would go there and forage for scraps. Otherwise, they're quite shy. What is unique about them is that they are super precocious. So when they hatch, they can fend for themselves, they can run, they can see, they can even fly in some cases. And another unique feature with this family is that they're not incubated, but they are buried in huge mounds with composting, rotting vegetation, providing the heat to incubate the eggs. And the males tend to the mound and add or remove a litter according to whatever the temperature happens to be. Fascinating. So with that, it's thinking about this whole experience. It's easy to be left with the image of that scrub fowl scavenging for scraps in a pavilion for day tripping tourists. I think I would much rather think of the place as this, where we had a long-tailed langur having set up his evening roost down by the Kinabatangan River in an undisturbed forest, and be thankful for the few pieces of intact forest and nature that we have left. And as MRT is a good example, Charlie and Jim, to fight for what we have left to help them preserve it. And with that, I thank you very much for bearing with me. And
Thank you very much, Magnus. That was another great program. If there are any questions, I think we can do 2 or 3 more questions. Ellen?
But there were sure a lot of them in your presentation. Do you have knowledge or theory of why those are so strong?
The question is about why the birds in Borneo and other places like that are so brilliantly colored, and more so there than other places.
I think that's a great question, Ellen, and I don't know the answer, but I can imagine that in the really dappled light and dark environment of a rainforest, you kind of have to be really colorful to stand out if that's your mode of communicating with your partner, say, rather than with a song. If it's a visual way of impressing your partner, I think that helps you in that kind of environment. That's my just off the cuff speculation, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the natural resource background and the fabulous photos.
Oh, thank you.
But so I was just curious if you have any text to recommend that kind of frames your knowledge base for either the evolutionary side of things or.
Yes. So the question was about literary references to help a reader or a potential visitor learn about Borneo and the wildlife. That's a great question, and for both for mammals and the interactions between animals and plants, I would highly recommend the Phillips Guide to Mammals of Borneo. It talks a great deal about not only where the animals live and so forth, but also how those relationships have developed. Very interesting. I would not recommend their bird guide. I would recommend the Susan Myers guide for birds, field guides. That's the one I drew most on for natural history.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome.
Early in the program, you have that giant five-lobe thing that was sort of a flower.
The Reclesia?
Yes, is that pretty?
Yes, exactly. You're right. I don't know exactly how old it is, but clearly it developed in a period when the world looked very different from what it does today. I'm going to have to go home and look that up.
Falling down
Yes. The question was, do I know anything about efforts to slow down the deforestation? And yes, I think yes and no. So on the no side, Indonesia announced, I guess, a couple of years ago that they're going to relocate the capital from Jakarta to Borneo, kind of like Brasilia in Brazil. But however, the Kalimantan is already so severely depleted that I'm not sure how big of an impact it's going to have. But I do know that both Malaysian government, Indonesian government are cognizant of the value, just intrinsically value of the biodiversity. And it was a slide I actually took out because I had too many already that shows the core of Borneo. It's an area primarily around the highlands, but that has been identified containing a very large swath of the remaining intact forest that have been identified by NGOs, WWF included, and the state governments of the island that attempts to make sure that deforestation is significantly reduced in pace, if not halted altogether. And also in some of the areas like Sepilok and Kimbatangan, there are efforts underway to buy out, if you will, or replace palm oil. But it's such a lucrative crop that I don't know how efficient that is going to be.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for tonight. We do have some books at the back if you're interested. They're free or give a donation. Also, please help put away some of the chairs if you could. And thank you again, Magnus. That was great.